So, hi everybody and welcome back to the C++ tutorial series for absolute beginners. This is video 49 and in this video we continue with our exercise. We created a simple plan and now I will create the simple plan which I created. I will turn this into code, but like I said, I will repeat again all what we learned so far so we can see how we use that in code in a development and so on, right? So first of all, let's start with int main. This is this one. This is the starting point where the compiler will jump in. And when we are here, we learned that the compiler, that our program will start here. Then we learned here we have this body. These are all time with this curly braces. This is shows that we have the body, and here we write our code. Then we have sometimes in our code comments, and comments, you know, should only be there when they are helping the programmer. In this case, for example, they are absolute not very useful. You should kick them out. In my case, I keep it because I want to repeat here all that and use all that what we learned so far. So in my case it makes a little bit sense to keep that, but still later I will kick them out of this program when I don't use them. And about comments, one more. Comments of course are useful also to activate, deactivate code, and you can much more do with comments. So that's set. But here on top we have libraries, and we said we should only include these libraries when we really need them. Actually, these libraries which you see here, we will need them in a moment, and the one library we already need, which is this std_get_char, and we learned this is just here to post the screen till the user enters a key, and this is just for convenience. Later we make in a real program we don't have something like that, but because we use this function here, this is actually a function. We have not learned a function, but if we use this one, we need this library cstd.io. That's that. So, and let's start with our coding, because the other libraries we will use in a moment too. So then here is a short description of about our product, what we should create, and here is our plan, how we try to create it. So here I start now with the first line, and I have prepared here a little bit code because I was too lazy to write it again after I made a mistake. And the thing is, I want to print out an info screen, which means just a text that it gives us information. In my case it is just this one. I just write it out, paste it in, and the thing what I did here is just print. I used here print out what we learned, and when we learned this std out, then we have to use this library which we learned is the include IO stream library, input output stream. And then we see here this operator. This one we have not learned. This is an overloaded operator, but we know this is an operator. And then we know when we print out something, we have to use this quotation marks. Then we write a text. And here we learned also we have this escape character, and this escape character with this end means new line. And here I have a strange looking line. Why I have here 3 new lines and then space, and then I write here shop list for 12 months. The reason for that is just visual optimization or visual representation more. And when I save this, when I start and we test now the code, if it's so far okay, and then you see that this one is more or less in the middle, but don't care about this graphical representation at start, because this code what we write here should be later adjusted by you when you know how to use a graphical interface, or by anyone who is a designer and optimize this code to a very nice window, adjust the picture or something in it and makes it beauty. But in our case we just make this one just for ourselves. That's beautiful enough, and we go on with our code. That's set. So the next point is I said I want an array with product names which I can print out. That is this part 1 here. So we finished this other part, and now I want, and how I'm doing this. And we learned we just create an array, and how we create an array we know exactly. We use an I will go there in a moment, but one more thing before we create an array, because we have to decide what what elements we put in this array, right? We have to use a type. It was for example, if we put numbers in the array, then we have to use a int, a float, or something like that. And when we put a name in it, in our case it's indeed a name, then we have to use a string. And I already created this little code too, because I don't want to write too much. But after this one I have created nothing, and then we will write it here together. So what I did is I created an array. So how we created an array, we write I used std string. Careful, when we use string std, what we have to do, we have to include the string library. That's very important. Here one more info why we have to include the string library, because we use that, that's okay. But here it would also work without including. Why? Because the string library is also included in this IO stream. But the question is why we have to include it again, even if it's included in IO stream. The reason for that is to make sure that if anything happens in the future, who knows, that this IO stream is not more included in this file, that this string is here and our code is not broken. So we still have to include it because we use it here. So we make it sure with that. Okay, with that said, I created the type. And the type, what was the type again? It was a restriction what this variable name can take. In my case, I used a very easy variable name. It says here product name, right? We need here product name. I said, okay, I make an array with product names. And actually, I made here 2 arrays, and the one array is just for demonstration and the other array is just which I really use. So let's talk about the difference about these 2 arrays. So when we watch them, the one array has here a slot number. The other array has here not a slot number. So why is that? So the reason for that is when you make an array with a slot number, in our case 10 slots, then you don't initialize all the values. In this case, all the product names. That means you just create the variable, you declare the variable, and this one are for the default values, and you say the array should have nothing in it as default values. And this one, when you use nothing in this brackets, because this one means you want to initialize this array directly, and then you have to write this curly braces and with all the elements. Important here is the elements which you are writing in are later the numbers which you have. For example, I wrote here 10 product names which I want to sell later in my shop, for example, and then these are 10, so this will be automatically calculated by the compiler, and here you will have an array with 10. That's very important. So one more info to the arrays, you can choose both. You can choose one of this solution. This one is the easy solution, I would say, but not all time possible. What I mean with that is if you don't know the product names, for example, then you have to create the array and you get later the info, which means you have to assign them later in another way. I used here in this case now this solution because I don't want to ask the user to enter now all the product names. I say, okay, I have this 10 products here, and I will calculate here my, I calculate here my list with this one here, what I have with these names here, and I just randomly throw in just some product names which we are going to sell. That said, we have created our first array, and yeah, let's do this for the other ones too. So now I have nothing prepared more. Now I have to write, and I think I should let's do it a little bit more. It's not too hard. So it says here, I want an array with prices for the product. That's very simple. It's similar to this one, but in this case, prices means numbers. And important is here also, probably not integers. We have learned float, double, integers. So which one we are going to use? We can use integers, full numbers, but sometimes these prices, the most realistic prices are with decimal point numbers, right? Because when you go to a shop, you see all time 1.99 and cent, something like that, $1.99 or $2.99. And that's why we have to use here a double or a float. In our case, let's use a float, it's enough. I use a float. And yeah, let's repeat fast a little bit about this primitive numbers, which we know is, I already repeated it, but why not one more time? So we learned int as a primitive number, then we learned a double as a primitive number. When I find it anywhere here, it's not here, then we add it here, double, and we learned also this float as a primitive number so far. So these are the numbers which we learned, and we choose here float. So, and let's create an array. So how we create an array now with float? We know that we don't need this std because it's a primitive number. We just can write float in. So, and then we have just to find a good variable name again. Let's see, product single prices. Okay, product price, very simple and very descriptive, product price. You see, you don't have to think much, sometimes much, because this one is very descriptive and it makes sense anyhow. And how we convert this to an array, like here before, we add square brackets, and now you can decide again if you want assign them later or directly. I'm too lazy. I assign this values directly, which means I write this floating point numbers here in TV. It costs 200 and important f, point f periods like this one, or 0f to make it more accurate. And then a PC costs the cost of a PC, let's say 400. I don't know, that's a random price, is probably not true at all. Where I throw something in, ball 10 and book 5. And clock, I don't know what a clock, let's say 30. A table, let's say 50. And chair, let's say 25. And let's say lamp 20.99. So we have indeed this 99 one time. And the car is a play car for kids. Let's say 10.99. And one, oops, here is a float moving. And the flower 3.99. All right. So I created my array, very simple, and I wrote these numbers in. These are my prices. So the question is now here, wait a minute, they are not connected, and that's the problem with these arrays which we learned so far. We can't connect them really, because later there are other things which we will learn, so we can connect them. But here we use a very simple trick, which I said to you, you can use it when I described this at the start. We use here 10 products, which means the slots start from 0 to 9. And I know this one will also start from 0 to 9. And they are then all time. I can use then all time the slot name to connect them. So 0 is here, 0 will be here, 1 is here, 1 will be here, and this is my, yes, connection which I make. So it's not a code connection, it's just a knowledge which you have to use in this case. Later we will learn other structures which you can connect real them together without knowing anything, and so on. So let's go on. Okay, here, the next line. I think this video is already a long again. I will continue to make this arrays, but you get the idea. I think we will create now the arrays for the other ones too, but here a little bit different. Here we will code a little bit more because we will try to create these random numbers too, and here we will try to calculate them later and so on. Yeah, so I stop here, and in the next video I continue with the solution. See you there. Bye.